Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. So today we have a unique episode of Neo-Conversations, which is my series where I discuss with like-minded and people of different opinions as well, topics of the day. Today we're going to be interviewing today Jeff Metrick, who is running for Congress as a Libertarian. Very unique, yes, I know. He's going to be running in the state of Arizona, where I'm from, for the 6th Arizona Congressional District. Just to give you some background, I met Jeff when I was protesting the End the Damn Wars event that occurred on the 20th anniversary of September 11th at El Dorado Park in Scottsdale. At this event, Jeff and I met. We had some debate and discussion over U.S. foreign policy. Obviously, we did not see eye to eye, but I left the event shaking his hand, meeting some people around him, and some of them were very friendly. And so I decided to invite him on and talk to him about his campaign. Talk to him where maybe there are areas where neoconservatives and libertarians meet, but also to talk later also about where we don't see eye to eye and perhaps change a few hearts and minds. So, Jeff, you're running as a libertarian for Congress. So,
Yes.
Please give us your introduction statement.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. And it was actually really nice to meet you at the End of Damn Wars. I was actually really great the dialogue we had. But for me, my whole thing has always been people over party. And I'm running as basically what you do, as long as it's not hurting other people, is no business of mine or the government's. And I'm tired of seeing both Republicans and Democrats want to be more in our lives. It's like, no, we don't live to serve you and what you believe is best for us, because we don't know what's best for each other unless we actually talk and engage with people. But we have people making arbitrary decisions that they think, oh, this is in the best interest, this is what the polling says. Go out and meet the people and talk to them like I do, and you do as well. And I really appreciate that you were willing to have a discussion with me and even invite me on your show. Thanks a lot.
No problem at all. I do appreciate you coming on. There's certainly a lot to talk about. So let's, because I think I told you this at the event. I did used to consider myself a libertarian, and that was in my younger days. I actually grew up in a Republican household, but I started, looking at libertarianism. Being that I'm from Arizona, the first libertarian I looked at was Barry Hess, and I saw him in the papers in Arizona and started reading up on him. And I started to say, I like this libertarian stuff. It makes sense to me. I mean, do what you want as long as you don't hurt anyone else. I thought that, hey, that's pretty cool right there. And so I started listening to it, and then developed actually into a Christian anarchist for my high school years. I eventually, later on, left that for Ron Paul style libertarianism, especially during the 2012 election when he got famous, when he really broke out. Because he did run, he also was in the primary in 2008 for the Republican Party. But he really didn't get the traction going until 2000 and the 12 primary. That was when he really got things going. And I did ascribe myself as a Ron Paul style libertarian who voted Republican. That was until 2016. But we'll get to that though later. I want to discuss in the initial stages some of your campaign issues. So if you could tell this audience, what are some of your policy positions?
For me, my policy positions, it starts with 2A, which I believe Arizona's 2A law should really become the law of the United States. It's a really phenomenal law. I love it. Immigration is a unique position where I'm not so much in the libertarian camp. I'm more of one of those people that works along the lines of practicality. I'm a pragmatist at the end of the day. And for me, on the border is yes, we need to stop the flow for the moment and clear out the detention facilities that we have that are overrun. People living under bridges. That's not compassionate. That's not humanitarian, and that's not even being within sort of Christian principles, which I don't necessarily subscribe to. I'm very spiritual, but I don't claim any faith. But when it comes to the border, I actually would like to see it set up to where you we clear out the detention facilities, people that can you have to learn English, pass the Constitution test, and they're staggered over like 6 months, a year, and then you stay clean for a year after that, or even 2 years after that. Then at the third year of the anniversary of when you came here, you raise your right hand and take an oath of citizenship. That is what both Democrats and Republicans want. They want a pathway to citizenship, but they also want control of the border, which I agree we do need to have control on. And that's a way to do it in a way that is both humane and compassionate and helps people achieve the American dream, that they come here because they want to come here because this is the land of opportunity. I've met so many business owners, so many people from India, Pakistan that come here and start businesses. I've met people from Mexico that have started businesses here, and they said the reason I came here is because I didn't have that opportunity in my home country. And I love that because they want to go out and they want to make their dream come true. And that's where the government needs to, in certain respects, when it comes to regulations, get out of the way and allow people to truly succeed and be great. I want to see the playing field level, but ultimately, your outcome in life is based on what you put into it. You only get out of this life what you put into it. If you want to be lazy your whole life, that's exactly the life you're going to have. If you want to work hard and have the government out of the way, which is what I'm all about, like I said, do what you want as long as you don't hurt other people. I don't care. It's not my job. I'm not the moral authority for the hundreds of thousands of people in my district. That's not my job. My job is to represent their interests, their wants, because I serve at their largesse. I like that. Can we have an immigration based on merit? And we actually do with the H-2 visa. Now that's a little bit different because this whole immigration thing, then we have to go into like the AMA and their role, because a lot of people don't realize that if you do residency in, let's say, London, before you can become a doctor in America, you have to do residency here. And the AMA actually caps the number of doctors every year. So we don't have a market-based solution for that, and that is one of the things, healthcare as well, that I'm going to start fleshing out more about, is I want a market-based solution to healthcare issues. Because when the market steps in, we can actually have better quality at a lower cost, lower premiums. I'm also against mandates of any type, because mandates are ultimately saying, I know what's best for you, but the people in Washington have been there for 30, 40, some 50 years. Like the average age of a senator, I think it's like almost 85, and the average age of a member of the House is 60 something. How are they representing people in this country that are so young? And they're really out of touch, and I think what we need is we need someone that can bring the disparate portions of both the Republican and Democrat Party together, because there's so many disenfranchised Republicans and so many disenfranchised Democrats, that's what I'm speaking to. Because when we come together, we realize that we have a strength, a unique strength that we don't have as individuals. But I never want to force people to come to me. I want you to come to me of your own volition. Because when we force people to do anything in life, it inherently breeds resentment. And okay,
And
I've seen this. I'm just reading some of the comments.
Go ahead, go ahead.
She's like, how about this for you? Are you fine with a UBI? No, I am not fine with a UBI. We've tried that during this pandemic which all these stimulus and all these payments were nothing but a soft launch UBI, and now you have people not wanting to work, which in turn is really neat because it's driving the minimum wage up, the starting wage for most people. And a lot of people don't understand that before the pandemic, the minimum wage was only covered like 2.9% of the entire workforce in this country. Everyone made above minimum wage. And that's a really big issue is now you see starting out places around here offering $19 an hour to be a cook. Just a cook, a line cook, nothing more. But because we had that soft launch UBI, I've heard business owners tell me, they're like, oh, we can't find people because people make more money being at home. And that's a problem. And that's why I'm against the UBI in any way, shape, or form, because how are you going to fund it? Are you going to raise taxes on people? I'll give you an example. California, 66% of your total paycheck goes to taxes in some way, shape, or form. That's a lot. When I heard that statistic, I was blown away. But we need to bring people together and have really just some common sense and start going, what is in the best interest of the individual? Because yes, we are a collective, we are a nation, but we're a nation of individuals, and the individual needs to be respected above all else. And that is my key thing, and that's why I'm people over party, and that's always kind of been my position. I've got to update my website with some stuff, but I've always been people over party, because if you want more freedom, more personal liberty, more personal responsibility, I'm your candidate. If you want the status quo of more spending, more taxes, then I am not your candidate, and you can go and vote for who you want to vote for. That's the great thing about this country. You can vote for who you want to vote for, and I want to bring that because I'm working with. I also endorse ranked choice voting. I think that's a phenomenal way that would get people from different parties to go, okay, this is cool. I can vote for my candidate, and he may win. Whereas, oh, it's just going to be a split between a Democrat and a Republican. It's like, do you want to get sat on by an elephant or kicked by a jackass? Which one do you want? I'm giving the people a third option. Someone that says, I'm not going to try to run your life and know what's best for you, because I don't know what's best for you. How can anyone say they know what's best for someone else if they've never walked a mile in their shoes or actually sat down and talked to them and had a conversation and said, oh, this is okay, now I understand. Like, when I get elected to Congress, because I just have this feeling I'm going to win, and I see it for myself. I'm going to come back to my district, and I'm going to walk around. I'm not going to do media and all this stuff, because the media is not who I'm trying to represent and who I serve. I serve my constituents. I serve my people that voted me in. I want to go and find out how they're doing. I have yet to see David Schweiker put on a town hall that I've heard about. I want to put on town halls whenever I'm back in town. I'll be splitting my time between DC and Washington, and Arizona is my home. That's the one thing. Like, I've lived a lot of places, California, Illinois, South Korea when I was in the military, but Arizona's home to me, and it feels like home. And I want to be the best representative for the independent spirit that we have in this state. We have an independent spirit, and it's so beautiful. And that's what I really want to do. And I know I've kind of meandered, but I'm speaking from the heart. This is not scripted. I don't have a teleprompter in front of me. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to be anything but me. And that's all I ask of anyone else is be you, be who you truly are. Because when you are who you truly are, the world is such a richer place for it. Be who you are, because then people know where you stand. And they don't have to guess where you stand. They can go, oh, I like him, I don't like him, and that's fine.
Well, thank you for that. That's a lot of information, certainly, a lot of things to think about and go over. Obviously, some of the people in my group, like Dragon Roz, who's a neoconservative friend of mine, already likes you already. So you've got at least one fan. So let's discuss a very important topic, and that is, you mentioned it earlier, and that is the mandates. Neoconservatives that I know, because we kind of had a a split in the neoconservative movement online. One of the groups wanted to be more, socially liberal, progressive, but interventionist. And then there was my side, which was no, we want to be neoconservative. We don't want to just be, a soft version of conservatism. We want to still be interventionist, but be conservative. And then we had our split. So obviously, there are the two different sides now have like a different perspective on, the mandates, lockdowns, vaccines, and such like that. Let's talk about your positions on the mandates. Are you for or against?
I am against the state mandating anything or anti-mandating. It should be up to the individual business owner to make the decision, and then we as consumers, if we want to go into a store that says you have to wear a mask, then we can choose to either go there and agree to the terms of going to said store, or we can go, we're taking our money elsewhere. But when the government gets involved in it, the government inherently rigs it to where you do what the government says. If you want to keep your tax credits, any of this, and it's like, no, it's like, let the consumer decide, because the consumer ultimately has the final say in the matter. And that's something I think a lot of Republicans have gotten away from and a lot of Democrats have gotten away from. And I'll give you a good example. In 1971, in our founding of our party, we were the first mainstream party to say gay marriage is not an issue for us because it's between two adults. The state has no business regulating that. It's a private consensual thing. Does it really matter? Does it hurt anyone if two men or two women marry? It does, because at the end of the day, it's the choice of what goes on in their bedroom, and I'm fine with that because it's none of our business. It's okay. Hold on, I want to read this. When it comes to vaccines, the Biden administration is not convincing anyone with their arguments. No, they're not. They're using a lot of fear, and that is something I don't play with. I don't delve into the realm of fear, because the realm of fear is where people's logical mind goes by the wayside, and then they go off very primitive, emotional driven things, which we're all emotional creatures. We can all agree with that. But we have to have logic when it comes to making laws, because we need people that can go, what is in the best interest of everyone, not what is in my best interest, not what makes me more grandstanding, makes me good, makes for good news cycle. Even though that's how our country and politics is driven, we need to bring a different voice to it, and someone that can go, hey, this is a much better way. It's a voluntary way. If you want to participate, great. If you don't, you don't. I don't feel bad for people that want to do their own thing. That's where I can talk to pretty much any political party if they're open. I was talking to Green Party people at the rally we met at. And I was asking very sort of simple questions. Like, they had these ideas. I'm like, how do you fund them? How do you do it? Because it's a good idea. I agree with it, but I don't agree with it if you're forcibly taking from other people to implement your idea of what you think is right, because it goes back to the question, who gets to decide what is morally right? Does Dragon get to decide what's morally right for me? Do I get to decide what's morally right for her? I don't I don't have that right. I don't want that right. I don't want that responsibility. You know what it would be like to be responsible for the moral decisions of 200,000 people? It's a task that no human can do, or no human can do competently. So that's why I believe the individual is ultimately the best arbiter of their own life and their own fate, because you have to be responsible for you, and we have to get the government out of trying to make the playing field equal when they actually don't make it equal, and they actually inherently help bigger businesses. And it's a really neat thing when you look at a prime example. Amazon started their wages out at $15 an hour and backed the federal minimum wage of $15 an hour. A lot of people think they did it for altruistic reasons. I'm a former business owner. I know why they did it. Because you're putting a squeeze on your competition at that point, because Amazon Logistics is a loss leader for them. Amazon makes all their money on AWS. Their Amazon computing system in the cloud, that's where they make their money at. They don't make their money off shipping t-shirts. I work for Amazon right now as a delivery driver. Coercion boarding on thuggery is the solution to public health. crisis/scam. Okay, that's what the administration is doing. Yeah, I would agree with that. We just need to step up and start really caring about our fellow human. Like, I'm one of those people, like, when I see a homeless person or someone in need, I try to help if I have the means to. I don't put that responsibility on anyone else but me. So, I kind of got a little off topic, and I apologize again, but this is something I'm very passionate about, is really helping people, but helping people by getting government out of the business of doing it because they do a miserable job at it. Every program they've ever started has been an abject failure. Poverty was supposed to be ameliorated under the Great Society under Lyndon Johnson. That didn't happen. Poverty kept. We can agree on immigration. On immigration, Biden is a joke. I agree with that. And I would also say the Republicans that are caving right now in the Senate and the House, and really just, they're cowards as well. They're not standing on principles anymore. It's, oh, I'm gonna do because this is the way the political winds are blowing. But here's the thing: when you compromise your principles and you compromise what you truly believe in to appease the masses, you will do neither, because the mass is very fickle. They really are. And we have to understand that we have to be out there as politicians, as elected representatives, out there actually interacting with people and not being shut up in our own little ivory towers, in our own little bubbles that we created for ourselves. And I want to pop those bubbles and start bringing people out, because I'm starting to come out of my bubble that I was in. And I want to do that and bring people to the understanding, and then they can choose to do what they want with it. I want to give them the choice, and then they make their own decisions. And I wish them nothing but the best for those decisions that they make. Whether they go agree with me or don't agree with me, I wish them well.
Yeah, I understand some of your perspectives because I'm not supportive either of the lockdowns at this point. I think that the lockdowns have done really more harm than good, if anything. I mean, we've seen
Yes, they
uh,
have.
we've seen businesses shutter their doors forever.
I shut my business down because of it, because it wasn't profitable. I sold candles, and I donated 10% of my gross to Operation Homefront. But I just couldn't make it. It wasn't viable for me anymore, so I had to shut it down. And it hurt me to do it because I'm an entrepreneur. And I was just like, okay, but it's also, I'm a business owner, and I have to understand I can't afford to keep eating losses anymore. It doesn't work. Because businesses don't stay in business if they eat losses. Unless they get bailouts from the government, then they can afford to eat losses.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I'm very sorry that happened to you. It's because again, I mean, we've seen businesses shutter their doors, and people say, "Oh, well, give me an example." Okay, I'll give you an example. Salad and Go. Other buffet style restaurants. Like that literally just shut their doors forever. Like they could like if I remember, I don't remember the name exactly. I'm gonna look it up so that way I can give it to the audience. Um, but one business in particular, just after 1 month, just couldn't handle it, you know. And here it is. Okay, so I grew up in Southern California. Okay, and in Southern California, when I was a kid, Soup Plantation was one of my favorite places to go. I mean, it was just the best, you know. And as a result of this pandemic, they had to shut, they because of the lockdowns, they just couldn't handle the losses, like you couldn't. And so they had to shut their doors down forever. And it's just absolutely awful because all those people who worked there lost their jobs literally practically, and I could say overnight. They lost everything because the government decided that they were going to shut down the businesses in the name of public safety, and all that did end up doing was causing people to lose their jobs forever. And that's the link, everyone. I put it in the Twitch and the YouTube if you want to take a look at it, because so I'm opposed to these lockdowns at this point because they have absolutely failed to really address the issue of the pandemic. Um, and they've done more harm than good. And let's go now to the second point on top of that issue. Um, Mandatory vaccinations for COVID-19. Yes or no, and why?
No, 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 no. Mandatory vaccines for COVID, because it's been proven that even if you get vaccinated, you can still get it, even though your symptoms will be mitigated, which is whatever, but it should still be a personal choice because, or New York and California, yep, I'll agree with that, but it's a personal choice. And that's the one thing where I'm starting to see people that are pro abortion are like, my body, my choice. Some of them are actually going, yeah, that also applies to vaccines. And I'm for it because I'm for not having any type of mandate like that because it makes a second class citizen out of people who don't get the vaccine for whatever reason, whether their doctor recommends that they don't because they have an underlying health condition, people who oppose it for moral or spiritual or religious reasons. I have no problems with that. It should be strictly voluntary. It's like a mask. Yeah, if I'm in a place and people ask me to wear a mask and I want to go in that place, that store, guess what I do? I put on a mask. I respect people's wishes. But it's a place that's like, you want to know something? I just don't need to go there. I won't go there. And that's what it is. It should be, everything should be about choice and opportunity because we need to understand that it's not mommy government or daddy government wet nursing you and taking care of you, wiping your snotty nose. You have to step up and grow into being a person instead of just being conditioned in the education system. Be here at this time, respond to this bell, do this, do that. Don't express yourself. And then you wonder, and I don't know if it's correlation or causational, but people that can't express themselves in childhood generally grow up and be, and I've seen it, kind of miserable adults to be around. And it's like we don't allow people to explore and create and find stuff that they're naturally good at, and then encourage them to go into that because then they actually enjoy what they do. Work becomes a joy to them. It doesn't become, man, I gotta go in today, 9 to 5, punch in, and do something I'm not really passionate about because I gave up on my passions. I gave up on my purpose, and that's really sad. And I keep bringing it back to more so the overall view of it that forcing people to do anything is inherently wrong, at least for me personally. And I would never support bills that force people to do anything against their will as long as they're not hurting other people in the process.
Yeah, it just kind of surprises me what I've seen out there, how a lot of the people's, saying, pro-choice side of things, really just badger on and demand that, people, if they, lose their jobs if they don't get the vaccine. I thought we were supposed to care about, people's, jobs and their futures, their economic status, and, and instead, we're firing people for not getting the vaccine. I mean, that's going on in Washington. Over 100 officers have essentially been terminated involuntarily, especially in a time when there is a need for a greater amount of police, because the fact of the matter is that police departments across the country are suffering from low morale. They're understaffed, they're undermanned, they're overworked, and even some of them now are getting defunded. And so now they have more responsibilities, less funding, and now they've just made it even worse by saying, "Oh, well, if you don't get the vaccine, you're going to get fired," and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Because I'm vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and I'm happy I'm vaccinated because I think that I'm safer than others. However, I don't feel I have any right whatsoever to literally force someone to get vaccinated for COVID, and then threaten to take their job if they don't. I mean, it's absolute, government overreach. So I think that's another area, in which neoconservatives like myself and you can agree on is that this has just gone way too far.
Yeah, yes, it has. It's gone way, way too far, and it's both the Republicans and Democrats, and that's the problem we have with the duopoly system we currently have, is they just play opposition to each other, because when you look at it, one, Trump wanted to raise the debt ceiling. I believe it was him. Democrats were against it, but now that they have a Democrat in the White House, they're all for raising the debt ceiling and using whatever nebulous term they want to use to continue the funding and continue this unmitigated spending that we've been on really since the end of the Cold War. It especially ramped up after 2001, which is when I served, and we keep spending, 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 but that bill's got to come due at some point, and people don't realize, just the two of us sitting here talking, we each owe $250,000 or almost $250,000 of the total national debt, and every citizen in this country is on the hook for 84,000 of it. And we have this unmitigated spending that people talk about. We need to lower taxes, but we want to fund these programs on both sides. It's like, no, you can't do that. You can't just make money magically appear out of thin air. And that's been our biggest problem in this country is, like, I'm 37. I'm going to date myself. I remember in the mid-90s, gas was like $1 a gallon. The purchasing power of the dollar has steadily gone down since 1913, and it's really bad. Now, going back to the whole defund the police, I would actually be more interested in discussing creating a private security companies, creating competition against the monopoly of the state, and see which side wins out, ultimately at the end of the day, and let the marketplace pick the winner and loser of how best to provide their security and their safety. Because inherently, I have no problem with police. I have a problem with victimless crime laws, tail lights, license plate lights, registration. I have an inherent problem with that because those are victimless crimes. Who are they really hurting? And that's my question I always ask people is, you want to propose this law, what is the need for it, and what you're making a law against? Is it really hurting people? Like, I'll give you an example, sex work. I'm for the decriminalization of sex work completely. It's consenting adults, it's a business transaction at the end of the day, and that's all it is. And both parties agree to it. There's no force, no coercion. It's all done, contract done at the end of the day. Okay, there's a comment that popped up. Put our police officers, firefighters, servicemen, and first responders. Okay, I can agree with that from a moral position, but strictly speaking, from a dollars and cents position, how do we do that? That's a really good question. And I actually agree with putting servicemen, first responders. But at the same time, I want to see competition, particularly within the police departments, for providing the best service. Because as a business owner, when you provide the best quality product at the lowest price possible with the best customer service, you succeed. And if there's no competition, what is your incentives then to provide the best? That's always been my question. If there's no competition, what makes people want to be better, even if it's against themselves?
So I think this, I guess, or we'll go transition then from the agreement to the disagreement area. So you as a libertarian, and I've heard this policy position before with libertarians about sex work and things like that, legalization and such. That's something neoconservatives and I do not agree with, because the idea that we're going to legalize, in some way, prostitution or like sex work is, in my mind, just asinine. I would never consider that because I'm not going to. I don't want to have essentially what places of ill repute, in my neighborhood or where I live. And I think that that's a problem with libertarians in general, is that this is why it's hard for libertarians in general to win an election, because when we hear what you say, like, lower taxes, you have a right to choose and do things that make you happy. People will never force you. I think average everyday people can say, okay, I can get on that. But then when you come with the position, and I do believe it's an extreme position, you can counter that if you'd like. But when it comes to that, people, middle class people, just kind of like, no, I'm definitely not on board with that. So you can address that if you'd like. I want to go to something else.
I would.
Yeah, sure.
For me, it simply comes down to what two consenting adults do is no one's business. It doesn't hurt anyone. Then what gives anyone the moral authority to say, okay, if you don't want to be near a place of ill repute, then you at a local level can pass ordinances against it. But I'm talking at a federal level. That's no business of the federal government. That's individuals within the state. That's where we need to put the power back to the states to allow them to make decisions like that. Or even cities. Allow people that truly believe in whatever they believe in to make those laws. But at the end of the day, no one has a right to say that two consenting adults can't have sex and exchange money. Prime example, do we believe that marriage is a religious institution, or do we believe it is a secular civil institution? I, for one, believe that marriage, because the state is involved in it, loses the religious value of it and becomes strictly a secular value. And when it becomes secular, then why is religion even trying to be brought into it again? Now, I'm all for getting state out of the business of marriage. Let it be between two adults, whether they want to get married by a judge or married by the clergy. I don't care. It's their life to live. It's not mine, and I have no moral authority to say I'm going to tell you how to live your life. As long as you're not hurting other people, it's none of my business at the end of the day, and that's really where I'm at as a libertarian. I believe in giving you as much freedom as you want. As long as you don't hurt other people with that freedom, live your life, because that's what I try to do. I try to live my life every day.
Well, I think people don't mind you living your life, but again, when it comes to that really serious topic, parents in general and society in general doesn't want places like that in their neighborhoods, or even, I think, and the federal government, essentially staying out of that business, I think would be a very bad idea for neighborhoods and for essentially the moral health of a neighborhood. But let's move on to something else, though, because I want to continue some of your positions, because we've been kind of discussing more of some of the points being made in your campaign, but mainly though questions that people have been asking in the chat. So
Okay.
So what I want to do is go over, I suppose, or at least let the audience know where you're running, because we did not do that at the beginning. Because we said where you are, but for those who are not familiar with Arizona, because I'm going to share the screen and let you all see where the Arizona 6th Congressional District is. So this is a sort of a rough area, everyone, of where it is. Okay, it comprises areas of Cave Creek, Fountain Hills, Paradise Valley, some parts here of North Phoenix, and parts right here of North and Central Scottsdale. So those are some pretty nice neighborhoods. I've actually worked around there. They're not too bad. So that way you all kind of can see where he's running specifically for. So let's go off into some of your gallery right here real quick. So this is a Second Amendment rally in Phoenix. When was that?
February 20th of this year.
Okay, so essentially promoting, people's right to own a gun, Second Amendment stuff. I see the little libertarian. Open
Yep.
carry, yes. I see the.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, I'm I'm for it, but you won't see me carrying an M16 around. It's just I kind of like I do get personally uncomfortable. um, so and then the Freedom Works Unmute America. I'm not familiar with that. What is that?
It was an event that I was invited to, and it was just sort of a discussion put on by Freedom Works. I met some people. I met a former mayoral candidate. I met a current member of the legislature, and it was just a really neat discussion. Really, just talking about like mask mandates and everything like that. It was just really neat.
Yeah, I see.
And
You got Marissa Hamilton right there. I actually know her. I volunteered for her mayoral campaign in Phoenix.
yeah, I met her. She's a nice woman.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily agree on a lot of things, but still a really nice woman.
Hmm. And what's this Frontier Summit? Some libertarian event? Because I see the pins right here.
Yes, the guy in the middle is Marshall Burt. He was actually elected to the Wyoming State House as a libertarian. He
Yeah, and
ran at,
that's a thing. It's when a libertarian gets elected, that makes news because it's just so rare.
it is. And he actually ran in a red district and won. And he won by 9 percentage points. It was also, there were areas of the district that were blue as well. So we really called a purple district, but he was able to flip it to gold. Um, and that was the Frontier Summit was basically for decriminalizing marijuana, and because I'm not for legalizing it because soda is legal and anyone can buy a soda. I'm for decriminalizing it, removing the penalties for victimless crimes. Because marijuana possession is a victimless crime to me, and
All
that's
right.
really what I'm about. I'm about helping, just because I don't want there to be jails full of people who didn't do anything other than having a plant on them. That's really stupid to me and a waste of resources and a waste of money. Because I'm one of those people, being a former business owner, is if I have to keep spending more and more money and I'm not seeing a return on my investment, I have to logically stop and figure out where the problem in the systems are and figure out whether it's even a worthwhile investment anymore for me or just to cut my sunk costs and put the money elsewhere. We need to, and those are the hard discussions that no one wants to have because people become so entrenched in their own positions and their own ideologies. I just want people to come together and go, hey, maybe we can work together and figure something out and govern by consensus. But we've gone so far to the point that we have two polar camps in this country and no one wants to talk to each other anymore. No one wants to have a civil conversation. Like me and you at the event on September 11th, we didn't agree. But guess what? We kept it civil, right? There was no shouting from my end, no shouting from your end. That's the level of discourse we need again in this country. To where people can go, okay, I don't agree with you, but I respect your right to have that position and do that as long as it doesn't hurt other people. That's my big thing, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. And like when you're going back to the morality of sex work, that's a valid argument for conservatives. That's a really valid argument, and I agree with it. But it doesn't give them the moral authority to lord it over the people at a high level. If the city wants to have it, or a town wants to have it, or even a state wants to have it, I'm fine with that because those people that they're making that law for live in that state and have agreed to those terms. But when you have someone at a federal level making a law or a regulation or an executive order that governs 300 million people that have different ideologies, different social backgrounds, different economic status, different cultures, because you have a California culture, you have a Texas culture all into itself, then you have the rest of the South, you have a Northeast culture, you have a Midwest culture, and those cultures, one size doesn't fit all, and that's the problem I have with government, both Democrat and Republican, is they try one size fits all approaches, and guess what? We're not a one size fits all. I don't typecast people. But that's what Democrats and Republicans like to do because it makes it easier. But it takes away the individuality of the individual, if that makes sense.
Well, I see your position, but I don't agree with its point, though, because um, whether a local community wants to have that or not, I don't see why any local community would want that sort of thing in their neighborhood. I think it sets, as a conservative, certainly, it sets a very bad moral precedent to have places like that. And it's just absolutely. I'll just be frank. From a conservative position, it's just morally degenerate. I, that's my position. I can't change that. And let's go to the drug laws though, real quick. You did mention that, and that is actually a position on your campaign on the issues. So let's bring up I'm going to bring up the shared screen again, and we're going to go over some of your positions on drug legalization. So right here under the issues, we have criminal justice reform. And you did just talk about what you feel, drug reform, and you did mention victimless crime law. So I will just highlight this for the audience. So we have drug law reform, this section right here. What someone chooses to put in their body, voluntary is no business of the state, et cetera, et cetera. I would propose a federal bill to declassify marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic and allows it to be used for both medical and recreational purposes. I understand that a lot of people these days are more accepting of marijuana as more of like a personal choice. But I certainly don't agree with the idea of it being legalized. I want it to be, I believe in the idea of decriminalizing it because,
That's what, like, if you notice what I've been saying, I'm for decriminalizing a lot of things, but I'm not for legalizing it. That's always been my thing is keep the government out of it. You decriminalize it, it's still a controlled. It can still be controlled like we control tobacco and alcohol.
okay, so you actually don't believe in marijuana legalization. You actually believe in just decriminalizing marijuana.
Decriminalizing it and let the states make up their own policy positions because it's no business of the federal government to micromanage states. That's why it's
Okay,
called
so
states and not provinces.
okay, that's interesting because most libertarians, particularly, I would say, even the left leaning libertarians are for legalization, and I'm not. I'm for the idea of decriminalization to the sense where I think that if you have it, then I don't think you should go to jail or potentially prison for it. I think the state should just say, okay, here's a fine, show up to court, pay the fine, and there you go. Because
See,
I don't see it, but I don't see it as a good thing for communities because I mean where I live over in West Phoenix, some of the like it's unfortunately got some not the best neighborhoods. The Maryvale and West Alhambra areas are just really just gone down in years. And I see the people on the streets. You'll see the homeless encampments, in certain areas in Maryvale and others. And a lot of these people are essentially drug addicts. They're on marijuana or meth or crack, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, and all of these substances have essentially, ruined these people's lives. And I don't like the idea of legalizing these drugs, or even, and I'm even hesitant to decriminalize, marijuana, just because I mean I go to my neighborhoods, some of the nicest areas are like the marijuana dispensaries, and everything else is like ew, not really good. I don't. What would you say to parents or people who are really concerned about these substances potentially getting to their kids? Because I would think that if you legalize or decriminalize it, this would happen more often.
okay, and to the parents, it's not the state's job to raise your kid. You need to teach your kids from a young age what your beliefs are, and that falls squarely on the parents. And that's one of the things like we've done with education. And I just want parents to really step up and go, because kids even do it even if it's not decriminalized. I smoked weed when I was a kid. I did it. And that's actually
I never,
position in all.
I just want to make it clear to the audience. I have never smoked marijuana and will never do it.
And that's a
Because
personal choice, and I respect it. It's not for everyone, and I respect people's rights not to do something, but I also respect people's rights to do something. Because just because it offends someone's moral sensibility doesn't mean you have to pass a law on it. As long as it's between a consenting adult, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Because we all have an inalienable right to our pursuit of happiness. No one's obligated to give you that pursuit of happiness. They're just to get out of the way, as long as it doesn't hurt other people.
well, you say that it doesn't hurt other people, but when it comes to drugs in general, whether it's marijuana, crack cocaine, heroin, and I don't know if now you have said that you favor decriminalization on a federal level, not legalization though on a federal level. I do know that, but having been a former libertarian myself, the position of the Libertarian Party is generally geared towards eventually legalizing these substances and taxing them and things like that. Sort of like they point to places like Portugal, for example, which has largely decriminalized drugs to a degree, and they say, oh well, this is absolutely so wonderful. But the fact of the matter is that even Portugal has its problems. You see people use these substances more openly now, and I don't want this. And I don't. The thing about drugs is that they do have societal repercussions. These substances do have societal repercussions. They make certain behaviors, bad behaviors, more prevalent because when you're on drugs, you're not thinking, you're not in a right state of mind. And when it comes to drugs in Arizona, what Dragon Ross mentions, Mexican drug cartels. I mean, they send their stuff across the border. They, not just illegal immigration, but also drug cartels. And essentially they've got a foothold here, and I don't want to see that stuff that they peddle, in our neighborhoods and then become, essentially, legalized. But
Okay.
I mean, that's a position you and I aren't going to agree on. But
Yeah.
I, I do at least respect your position. We can have a conversation and not, hate each other for the different position. Let me ask you another question. Let's go away from your policy to a little thing in the chat right here. Not to switch topics immediately, but at some point ask him the Trump question. So this is a very contentious issue amongst blue and red voters, and even among red voters. Arizona actually went blue in the last presidential election, and that was because Arizona is very unique in that it's not just a right state or a left state. People here who are on the right in Republican circles actually have some very are actually a bit more centrist than they would be in other places. And what the prior Trump administration did was it totally distanced itself to the point of hostility with, McCain-style Republicans. And as a result, Trump lost Arizona because rather than, in my opinion, trying to make amends with, John McCain and with his family, he just, dug in his heels and got more confrontational. And as a result, Republican voters in AZ just said, well, to hell with him. And obviously now people are having a bit of Biden regret, and I can understand that because of the lockdowns, the mandates, and also the debacle of a withdrawal that the administration presided over in Afghanistan. And I've got a friend, Henry, who's a veteran, who did a video on that, and I'll send it to you so you can watch it, because he's actually pretty. He hasn't self-identified as neoconservative, but he's very hawkish like us. But I'll ask you that question. Will Trump be a dominating factor in the GOP in Arizona or in the country nationally? Either one.
Honestly, Trump he did some good things, but he also, in certain respects, tried to almost sort of claim being a libertarian a little bit, and he failed miserably at living up to anything of the principles. He did some good things, but Trump is. I look at stuff over centuries. I don't look at stuff in 4 and 8 year cycles, because that is the inherent problem with dealing with the next question, which is going to be China. China doesn't look at stuff in 4, 8, 10. They look at 50, 100, 200-year cycles, and they plan out ahead accordingly. And that's always sort of been one of the things, like in Sun Tzu and in Deng Xiaoping's 24 points, was you behave in a very calm way, and you have a plan in the long term. But Trump, I don't think, is going to be much of a factor beyond 24. I'm going to be perfectly honest, because there are people that are like, oh, he's back. There are people on the left that are just going to sink their heels in and not vote for him, even if he is because I'm going to be honest, I didn't like a lot of his positions, but he was a far better candidate than Biden is. He's a far better candidate. Just from a pure ground game, just an ability to speak and be articulate and be passionate. One thing I can say that was a positive for Trump is he had a passion for what he said. He never said something if he didn't believe it 100%. And you even read his book, The Art of the Deal, he talks about it in there as well. So I don't think he's going to be much of a factor beyond 24, because then he'll be 80. Or he'll be almost 80. And at that point, it's like we need younger people to step up that are both conservatives, liberals, libertarians, because we need to end this two-party system that's had a stranglehold in this country for a really long time, and it really hasn't changed. Either side gets in and they all push their positions that they think are morally right, but at the end of the day, it's like, it goes back to what gives anyone any moral authority over another person. I didn't sign a contract to that effect to have someone have moral authority over me. You got it all the way messed up in that respect. The only contract I ever signed was when I joined the Army at 18 years old. That's the only contract I've ever signed.
Well, I understand. Yeah, I would say that with Trump, he was sort of a mixed bag as a neoconservative, because from our position, I mean, like what Dragon said, he did take out Soleimani, and Soleimani was responsible for the deaths of numerous American servicemen in Iraq. And so I'm not going to lose any sleep over that man who essentially was responsible for Americans being killed in Iraq, through terrorist action there he supported. And there was times I really thought he was going to be, hawkish on China, but he kept kind of going back and forth, because he would be hawkish, but then he would be talking with the CCP, and then he'd get back to the hawkish rhetoric, but then he would say, "Oh, we're making progress on the trade deal." But the thing is with this whole COVID-19 experience that we've had, I think that's just shown that the CCP and the United States are just going to be diametrically opposed, because, I mean, what the CCP have done essentially with COVID-19 to the world has just shown that they're a rogue actor that really doesn't care, how many people die, and is willing to lie to the world about what they've done. And just, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we don't even have the full picture, because they won't let people, they would not let people in, Wuhan, foreign inspectors without tails, giving them all access, and they would not let them in until a very long time afterwards, in which they could obviously manipulate things to fit their narrative. I think that what we need now is to have a really strong position on the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So, if you are elected to Congress, you will be essentially representing not just local issues for your constituents. You'll also have to be.
Hold on.
Oh,
Hold
sure.
on. My Bluetooth headphones just died because it hit an hour.
Okay, sorry. So you'll.
I'm on my phone right now. Does it still work?
No problem. It's understandable. I can still hear you as long as we're not talking over each other. You come out fine. When we're talking, if we come out, then you blank out. Um, so I suppose that when it comes to the areas of foreign policy, that when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party, I hope that if you are elected, you'll take a strong position. What would be your position on the CCP? You kind of discussed it a little bit, but if you are elected to Congress, you will be representing your local constituents, obviously. But what will you do in that regard, or at least what will you try to do?
Honestly, China is something, because we're so interconnected economically and interconnected in the world, it really becomes hard to try to isolate a country like China. It really does. And honestly, is what, and I'm asking, and this is a legitimate question, is I don't have the answers to this. Most politicians be like, I'm going to give you this answer. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have the answer to this. Is how do we confront a country like China? Do we do it militarily? Do we do it economically? How do we do it? Because that's the ultimate question. And any of those options are going to be incredibly costly. And then we have to weigh the CCP only cares about their prestige, and that's very true. But we have to weigh the options. Is this a good investment of resources and time? Because resources, yeah, we can get those back in some way, shape, or form. But time is the one commodity we never get back. So we have to make decisions that are strategic, that still advance our goals, but in such a way that can be done through consensus building. And people can say that that's a very Democrat sounding thing. But like I said, I'm pragmatic. I have to look at the reality that we have right now. And I'm not going to make blue skies and bullshit promises like politicians do. I have to be pragmatic, and I can't lie to you. I can't lie to people because it just makes it so hard to govern. And then I'm held to this standard, and I'm like, man, people say I'm going to do this and then get elected and then forget about it. I don't want to be one of those people. I can't tell you what I would do with the CCP. Do I think we need to engage with them? Yes. We need to do economic things, create black markets, stuff like that. But regime change or a direct military confrontation, that is not going to happen. That would be that would be a really bloody.
Let me interrupt you real quick. So what happens though if the CCP invades Taiwan? If you won't be obviously president, that's not what you're running for. But as a member of Congress, if you are elected and during your time, the CCP does invade Taiwan, obviously your constituents are going to want a statement from you, a position from you. If that happens, what would you say to them?
I would tell them that, yes, we have a treaty with Taiwan, but we also have to ask ourselves, is defending an island like Taiwan worth the investment that's going to cost in equipment, material, and most of all, our sons and daughters? Is it a worthwhile investment at the end of the day? Because people don't like this, but I have to put this as a hard truth for a lot of people. Every decision we make in life, doesn't matter how small, is an economic decision at the end of the day. And we have a responsibility. Is it worth possibly losing 500,000 people to protect an island? Is it in our interest to do that? Another option would be to let the Japanese rearm themselves. That's a really good option. That would quiet down the entire region, because when you look at it historically, the North Koreans don't like Japanese. Chinese don't like the Japanese. Japanese don't like either one of them. So it would be maybe a stabilizing influence in the region. But do I think we need like a direct involvement over Taiwan? That would be a bridge I would have to cross, and I'd have to have a lot more details about before I could make an official policy position and statement. And I think that's only fair.
Well, I mean, to your comment, are we willing to lose 500,000 people for an island? I would just say that yes, we did that once in World War II when we fought for an island, and that was Great Britain, knowing that they were the last bastion of democracy in Europe that was actually standing up to the Nazis, especially because Sweden and Switzerland had decided to, and Ireland had decided to essentially play the neutral game and keep out of it, for reasons that were different but were cowardly. Um, I can't agree with that position that you've stated because I understand the democratic nations have to stick together when it comes to despotic regimes like the CCP. But I hear you. I hear your policy position. You don't want to make a decision until you have to cross that bridge. Let's go back to some of your issues, though, for your constituents that are a little less geopolitical, a bit more local.
Okay.
So let's go back and here. All right, so immigration. That is probably a very big. That's a very no. That sorry, not probably. It is a very big topic here in Arizona because we are a border state. We do share a land border with Mexico, and we have a lot of illegal immigration from Central America. You state rightly, yes, the immigration system is broken, needs to be fixed. Here are your positions, though. So reform the visa system, visa reform is a topic, blah, blah, blah. Make it faster and easier for people who are the best and brightest to get here. Secure the southern border. We must have borders. We need to have a secure border. A border would include physical barriers, electronic barriers, and a streamlined process for processing people. I get those positions. Do you believe so? When I hear physical barriers and electronic barriers, I'm assuming that you're in support of a wall.
To a degree, yes, as long as it doesn't as long as any private property buttressing the border, the federal government would need to get easement rights, and I'm against the use of eminent domain. You would have to compensate people for the losses that they would incur. And that's the honest truth.
All right, and I see right here, visa, reform, make it easier for people who are the best and brightest to get here. Obviously, there's a big backlog on visas and stuff like that. There's also the issue too of people, because illegal immigrants don't just cross across the border. There's also people who get a visa, but then they rather than go back to their country of origin when their visa is expired, when they don't have a legitimate reason for stay. There's a physical. So obviously, when it comes to the border, one of the biggest ways to deal with illegal immigration is to have physical barriers, obviously, like a wall. But then you have to also we also have to look at people who overstay their visas. This is an issue that I would like to ask how you would deal with, because as a libertarian, yourself, I mean, I think this is a problem because for a libertarian to have a strong position here, I don't know if that's possible, because that would require essentially the authorities, going to addresses and to people's homes, knocking on the doors and asking people, hey, is so-and-so here? Yes. Okay. So-and-so, your visa expired on this. You have to, unfortunately, go back to your country of origin, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, how do you wrestle with that? Because I don't know if the libertarianism mixes well with that position right there of government telling people, essentially what to do.
And for me, it's a really simple position. I don't like the idea of going door to door. That was a scare tactic used by the Democrats. It was a phenomenal tactic they used. They knew how to employ it properly from a strategic level. But as a libertarian and as a candidate for Congress, if they're still contributing in productive numbers, doesn't matter if they overstay their visa at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if they're positive, contributing to society, what harm have they really caused? At the end of the day, other than
overstaying a visa. And if we wanted to, we could figure out how to do it, but there's no incentive in it. And because you'd just be looking at such a cost in terms of manpower, money, would the reward of doing it outweigh the cost of doing it? That's the question that a lot of stuff boils down to for me. What is the cost-benefit analysis? Because we're all stakeholders in this country.
Well, I get that too, and because it's what I mean is in the case, it's not like a lawyer who tells because if a lawyer tells a person whose visa is expired, and says, oh well, you can stay here because of so and so legal reason, okay, but I'm referring to people who who are here who don't have a legal reason. I don't want to obviously sound unsympathetic. Because I understand why people come here. They come here for a better life. I mean, my family, my mother is from Colombia. A lot of my family is from Colombia and South America. And so I understand why people come here. They come here for a better life and better opportunity. I think that the problem with having that perspective, though, that laissez-faire attitude is just that if it was just 10,000 illegal immigrants or 50,000 or 100,000, that's something that the United States could deal with. The problem is that the United States has millions upon millions of illegal immigrants. I mean, we don't even have accurate numbers because there's so many. And that is an issue here in Arizona, and your constituents are going to ask you about that. So how do you straddle the libertarian perspective of, let people do what they want so long as they're not harming anyone, but at the same time respecting, the rule of law, which is, that there's a process and it needs to be reformed, but there is a process and people have to respect that.
Okay, I covered that earlier in this interview, but I will cover it again. Like I said, I want a pathway to citizenship because we need to seal the border, clear up the border, all the detention centers. We need to get people processed through. We need to do it in an efficient and humane way, which you will not hear either party talk about efficient or humane. And I want to put people on a pathway that they have to pass certain requirements, not be able to stay clean for like 3 years, and then get their citizenship because, like, it kind of piggybacks off the next question, where's my position on multiculturalism? I'm for it if you bring a positive aspect from your society to ours because we are the melting pot. My parents or my great grandparents came from Germany and Lithuania, respectively. And what they did is they spoke Lithuanian and German in the home, but when they were out with everyone else, they spoke English. Now, that was their choice. They weren't required to. They made a choice to want to assimilate. And that's a big thing, is assimilating to the culture you're in. If I were to be in Mexico, let's say, I would want to learn Spanish because I want to be able to conversate with people and get to know people. And that's my thing, that's where the multiculturalism is. It's about assimilating because we have a culture in this country that's about freedom. That's one of what the Declaration of Independence is. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's us. And
yeah, because you talk about freedom, and neoconservatives are about freedom. Neoconservatives believe that people like tyrants and despots like Saddam Hussein, who take the freedom of people away, are illegitimate and need to be removed. We believe that people like Muammar Gaddafi, who take away the freedom of their people, are illegitimate and need to be removed. I think the difference, though, between libertarians and neoconservatives is that while, and I don't mean to be I don't mean to be insulting. I'm just being honest and upfront with you. my perspective is that libertarians talk about freedom, but they're not really willing to do anything about it on the global stage, whereas neoconservatives talk about freedom and actually want something done on the global stage. But let's go to your positions on economic reform, because obviously one of the biggest reasons why people vote for a candidate, and this will probably be the last section we go over, because I want to keep it under an hour and 30 minutes, is on economics. And because people, jobs, taxes, that's the most important thing for a lot of people. So your economic positions and economic reforms are vital for creating generational wealth and enabling the great people of my district to live the American dream. Sounds good? So, overregulation. We need fewer regulations so that business owners can hire more people. A good example of this is prohibitive healthcare requirements, tort reform on a federal level, and help businesses from being sued for things that they have no control. You would propose a bill stating there's no malicious intent, a suit cannot go forward. You also have here, we need to simplify the tax code so people keep more of their hard-earned money. Hey, I'm all for that idea. I like to keep more of my money. Who doesn't? And I would propose any type of tax bill that would go after wealth. A country needs to learn to live within its means. You know, that sounds pretty reasonable right there. I would just suppose, so this this regulation you have right here, when you talk about overregulation, what are some what? Give me one example of a regulation. You know, you talk about prohibitive healthcare requirements. Can you go into detail with that, or do you have another example of overregulation that you see that needs to be rid of?
The Affordable Care, or as everyone calls it, Obamacare, was a good example of a prohibitive regulation on businesses that businesses had to provide prima facie contraceptive, morning after pill. Well, okay, cool, whatever. But it shouldn't be the responsibility of the government to dictate what insurance is offered by a business. Whether the business offers insurance at all, it should be completely voluntary, and then the employee can decide, because the state doesn't need to be in the middle of between a company and their employees. They need to be out of it. It's not their job. Their job should be to level the playing field, not favor one side or the other, and let them sort it out themselves, because those are the two bargaining units. When you have the government get involved, you have that third person, and that third person doesn't play fair. You have to let the two people that are negotiating negotiate. Government doesn't need to come in and say, you have to provide this, this, and this. For me, this might be a radical idea. I'm for getting rid of a federal minimum wage. Because when you look at the history of the federal minimum wage, it was actually started under the progressive era, and it was originally designed to keep women and minorities out of the workforce. Because Woodrow Wilson actually said, and he was sort of retiring almost along the lines of Lincoln, but that's a whole nother conversation in history. But he basically said, and this is a quote, "A Chinaman cannot outwork an American, but he can underlive him." And that played to the whole thing of, okay, a white person making $3 an hour is better minimum wage. And when you look at why the minimum wage has gone up and the value of the dollar has become less, it's because we no longer have any backing for the dollar. It went from being a gold or silver note to now it's a Federal Reserve note. A lot of people didn't realize that changed. Everything else pretty much stayed the same, but the title changed. And in turn, when you change the title, you changed what it could do. And it just became very, very inflationary. And that's the thing. The one thing I would do is like a minimum wage, because here's the thing. A minimum wage of $15 an hour ain't going to buy you garbage in San Francisco, LA, San Diego, but $15 minimum wage will buy you a really nice place in Fargo, North Dakota. So why is the federal government trying to say we're going to have one size fits all? Because that's what we do in DC. We have one size fits all. We don't have any nuance. We have 1,1900, 2,000 page bills that no one reads. and we're going to make it all equitable, and they don't have clue. And I'm going to pardon my cursing. They don't have clue fucking one what they're talking about. They don't get out and meet the people. They don't live in their districts. Because here's a funny thing: you can run for Congress in Arizona and live in Chicago. However, once you win, you have to reside in your district. But up until that point, you don't. I've been in my district since I moved here, and I love my district, and I love Arizona. It's a beautiful state. I wish I'd have come here sooner in my life. But back
Well,
on.
we're glad you love it too.
Thank you. But back onto topic is we need to understand that when the government creates regulations, it doesn't inherently help the consumer like they claim it does. It inherently helps bigger businesses grow. Because when you have big business, they can go to the government and go, hey, we need a law because our competition is doing this. They'll never openly say it, and we all know it. Because we all know how businesses really work. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with that. The problem lies in their ability to influence. And if we can pass laws that say, hey, there's no federal minimum wage anymore, each state is responsible for their minimum wage. Because the closer you get to the people, the better it's governed. The farther from the people you go, the more layers of bureaucracy, the more layers of politicians you have to fight through, the less efficient and the less representative you are of the people. You don't represent the people. That's why I had a question. Do you realize that up until the passage of like the 19th or 20th, it was one of the amendments, the Senate was voted on by the legislature. The legislatures of each state voted 2 people to the Senate. A lot of people don't realize that the Senate was not always popular vote. The Senate was a lot along the lines of the House of Lords in England. It was a lot like that. And when you get it back to the people of the state, or actually have to be responsive to the legislature, has to be then responsive to the people. And I think the when we break it down more in the lines of more about states' rights and states ultimately having to say, because the people in those states have the most influence on their state. Just because what works in Arizona may not work in Chicago or Illinois or New York or Florida, may not work, or Texas, what works in Texas may not work across the rest of the country. And that's the thing I think we've gotten away from, is really that mentality that, like Reagan said, the state that governs best governs the least. And I may have butchered that a little bit.
Well, it's fine either way. I definitely can get on board some of your positions on the taxes and stuff like that. It's definitely important for people to keep more of their money than less of it. And you mentioned California. I grew up there, and it's absolutely atrocious to see the insane level of taxes there. I mean, the most controversial one was the gas tax. And I don't understand just how a lot of these, I don't understand how these, and I'm mainly Democrat leaders, think that they can make a tax for all sorts of things, and they're going to essentially, make bank or make their states economically solvent. When in reality, all they're doing is just driving people out of the state, and that's why my family left. Years back in the early 2000s, even then it was going in the wrong direction. And now I think that it's just, it's become a place where you can say, hey, I'll visit, but as for live, no way, because it's very difficult for someone to make it there fiscally and economically, just because of how much they've taxed people. So I guess it's another area where neoconservatives and libertarians can meet. We want to make sure that the people, the working class people, people who are working jobs, actually keep more of their money, because I mean, at the end of the day, who's more responsible with, your money? Is it, the government or the taxpayer? And do you want to make, essentially, I think that's, so I guess that's another area we can agree on. Since we're heading to the 1 hour and a half mark, I don't want to stay here past that. I want to try to keep my videos max at that. So Jeff, you got 3 minutes max. Closing statement. Make your pitch for why you should be elected to represent the Arizona 6th Congressional District. Go.
Thank you. I should be elected as your next representative for the Arizona 6th Congressional District. For the basic fact is, I want to give you your freedom back, your rights back. I want you to make your own decisions, be responsible for yourself, step in and own your own humanity in your own life. Stop abrogating that responsibility to other people, to other entities that may not have your best interests at heart. I'm for the Second Amendment. I'm for letting you open carry. I believe that should be the law of the land. I'm for economic reforms. Make it easier to start businesses. Not have all these burdensome regulations, particularly in the ag industry, in every other industry that has overregulation. There's this thing called regulatory capture. I'm going to do a YouTube video on that on my channel. But we just need to come together. I want to be the representative that says, yes, you can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican. I can represent both of you because in certain respects, I share your interests. I want people to be helped, but I don't believe it's the role of government to take money from people and give it to other people, and it hasn't solved the problem. We've had the Great Society since the 70s or since the late 60s under Johnson. And has poverty really gone down this country? No. Homelessness is going up. And everyone wants to blame the free market, but it's been government's fault from the beginning of that. They created a program that was inherent about buying votes. I'm not trying to buy people's votes. Either you like what I stand for, you like my positions, or you don't. And I'm fine with that either way. I just want you to live your best life and be free and have that choice to live your life the way you want to. Live your American dream. Because that's all we have is the American dream and each other. And once we come together, that is phenomenal. If you want to learn more about me, my website is winwithjeff.us. All my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which he just tagged in the chat, thank you very much, is winwithjeff 2022. Because I want to be the candidate that's people over party. Please, if you feel like, man, I really resonate with him, I'm gonna go and donate it. I would greatly appreciate that. If you live in my district, please go and sign my electronic petition that's on my website. But you have to be a registered independent or libertarian, which I think needs to be done away with, because if you agree with me and want to see me on the ballot, it doesn't matter what party you should be in. And we need to really come together and realize that our differences are not as big as they are told we are. Our differences are very small. We just need to come together and realize that we need freedoms, we need responsibility, and we need to care about each other and really step into that and embrace that full-heartedly. I want to thank Neo-Con. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you on the 11th. And man, maybe sometime we sit down. If you like beer, we can have a beer together. But you're a good person. I don't got nothing bad to say about you. You're a good person. You stand by what you believe, and you have your reasoning for believing what you believe. And that is the only thing I ask people is believe what you want to believe, but have your reasoning behind it.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming on. I do appreciate you speaking with the audience and giving us your perspectives. So everyone, if you want to check out his campaign, you can go to his Twitter page. I put that in the Twitch and also in the YouTube chat. And if you want to check out his campaign website, I've also put that in the Twitch and in the YouTube chat. Thank you so much, Jeff. We do appreciate you coming on, and I hope to my audience, please support me, please, via Ko-Fi. Support me via Twitch with bits if you can. Please give me a follow on my social media, RDFNet7 on Twitter and on my Goodreads and all those different accounts. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll do another episode of Neo-Conversations in the future. Hopefully have a neo-conservative perspective on some topics. Have a great day, everyone. And don't forget, death to all tyrants.